Welcome to What You Making, a podcast about sharing ideas and connecting with the maker community. Your hosts are Alex Adams, engineer turned furniture maker of Type A furniture, and an alien pretending to be a woodworker, Alex Duffey of Duffey Woodcraft. What You Making is proudly sponsored by Next Wave CNC.
Welcome to What You're Making, a podcast where we talk about what's on our bench, spotlight makers throughout the community, and remind you that today, February 18th, is National Drink Wine Day. So, rosé all day, people. Tonight's main topic is finding your style. I'm Alex Duffey, and you can find me on Instagram and on YouTube at Duffey Woodcraft.
And I am Alex Adams over at Type A Furniture on Instagram. And I would say I'm probably more of a Moscato guy myself, just because I just don't have the palate for like dry wines, like red wines. I'm not fancy enough for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know who is fancy enough for it?
Our patrons.
Our patrons.
And we actually have a new patron, Charlie Pickering. And we also have Jimmy, who upgraded his membership up to the Riddler tier. So if you would like to be cool like them, let's give them applause because it is well deserved. Head on over to patreon.com/whatchamakingShow, and you can pick from any of the various tiers for as little as $5.
And if you noticed in our lovely new little jingle at the top of the show here, we do have a sponsor now here at What You're Making, and it's Next Wave CNC. So American-made Next Wave CNC is your home for top-of-the-line CNCs from 1x1 all the way up to 4x4 sizes. They're a perfect fit for whatever shop and shop size you have.
Also, didn't you promise me you wouldn't change the music without saying anything?
I did, and I'm sorry.
You lied to me.
I'm sorry, not sorry. I may have made like 5 or 6 more. So,
oh, Lord. Oh, man.
Well, on that note,
what you doing?
So this week in my shop. So first of all, there was no episode last week. I was out really sick. It was probably the worst cold I've had in years. My wife got it first. She was sick in bed for like 4 days. I ended up getting it, and then I got better before her. Sorry, dear. But yeah, it was nasty cold, nasty. And it wasn't COVID.
That's
it wasn't
probably that new variant
flu.
of the flu that's been, I'm inclined to think it probably was.
You think so? There was
Did
no
you have
nausea or nothing like that. It was all just in the head. But like I had chills and no headache.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was weird. It was the weirdest cold I've had, but tested negative for COVID, tested negative for the flu, or for the influenza B or whatever. So
yeah, my son he tested positive for the flu about the same time that you were sick, which he gave that
funny.
to me. So that was wonderful. Even though I already had the flu earlier this year.
Caring is sharing, as they say.
Exactly.
So anyway, so that was the majority of my last couple of weeks. However, this week I feel a lot better. So I got right back into the shop. So first of all, I am starting to make a bunch of epoxy UFOs that I'll use for my UFO lights, because I want to, instead of doing the wooden saucer on some of them, I'm going to do epoxy so that they light up, because I got a new light kit that circles through colors. So as the beam will change colors, I want the UFO to change colors too, which will be kind of fun. So I made a couple of silicone molds off of some UFOs I 3D printed, and then I've been using them to make epoxy, which I can only do 2 at a time because that's as much silicone as I had. So
it's just
I'll be doing that for a few weeks.
You're using? It's like 2 molds of the UFO.
2 molds. Okay. Yep, and then I put them in my pressure pot and then put the pressure up to help get rid of the bubbles, which seems to work really well. So yeah, so I can only make 2 a day, so I'll probably be making them for a couple of weeks so I can get 10 or 20 of them. Depending on
How are you
my
using
schedule.
how are you getting the light to illuminate them? It's not in the epoxy as it's curing, is it? It's after the
Correct.
fact
So
you're adding it.
yeah, so the UFOs, the electronics are all in the base of itself, and the light shoots up through the beam. But because it's all acrylic, it just all lights up together, so it doesn't look like it's coming from the bottom. It looks like the whole thing's lit up at once. Um, so yeah, this way I figured that everything will light up, which will be kind of fun. But we'll see. I'll do a couple of tests here once I have a few more.
What kind of epoxy are you
Um,
using in that stuff? Is it technically a deep pour, or is it just kind of like a regular tabletop?
I am using tabletop epoxy because it's not, so most deep pour says it needs to be between 2 and 4 inches. And I would say the depth, the thickest point of these is 2 inches. So I'm worried about all the sides where it's only like half an inch where the saucer comes down to the point. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go with tabletop, and I haven't had any runoff issues or any like super flashing with it. So
Well, yeah, because I think a lot, I think more of your deep pour epoxies are in that 1 to 2 inch. I don't think there's a whole lot of them that are in that over 2 inch category, or at least say that they work for that. You just like, because I think I mean, if you can get with a tabletop epoxy, it's better because it's typically cheaper and it cures faster. So if you can get
yeah,
the quality that you want out of it, then definitely go that route.
yeah. I'm working with Wise Bond Epoxy. They're my epoxy sponsor, and so I work with them, and so I'm using their tabletop, which works really really well. I really like it. So yeah. Then the last couple of days I shifted gear and have been working on the laser, and have been designing about 5 new dice games that are 2-player games. I'm sure you've heard of like the dice baseball game, right? You know what that is? Have you seen
Not
that
familiar
laser
with it.
design?
Mm-mm.
It's basically a game where you roll dice, and that tells you if you got a base hit or a home run, or so on, and you move around your peg around the baseball the diamond. So I made a version of that
So
for the
Dungeons and
late.
Dragons for normies.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So I made that, but then I designed a football version, a hockey version, and a soccer version of it. But they're all like 5x6 size that I cut out on the laser, and I've got some thin leather that I'll glue to the wood so that it'll just all fold shut and then hold with a little pin.
So the leather is like the lid.
Yeah, the leather is the leather is the backing, and it basically folds on a hinge so that the two
Oh, so
wood
it's
pieces are
the
together.
2 pieces of wood. Oh, okay, gotcha. I thought it
Yeah.
was one piece of wood.
No, 2 pieces of wood.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so it'll be a nice little travel game. Yeah, I got part of the idea from a friend named Paul from Bees Boards is his YouTube, and or not YouTube, his Instagram, and they do a bunch of this 2-player games, and he had a couple of them, and I was like, ooh, I really want to make some. So I asked if I was okay to copy his baseball game. But then he even mentioned, he's like, yeah, I want to do a football and a hockey version. I was like, well, let me design it and I'll send it to you. So off it went.
There's some good
So
reciprocity.
yeah, exactly. So because he said he hates designing, he was like, maybe I'll just hire somebody from Fiverr. And I'm like, well, or I can do it anyway since I'm making my own versions right now. So yeah, so I did that. So I did, all the designs are done. I haven't test cut them yet. I was waiting on the leather to arrive, which actually just arrived. I saw UPS over my shoulder here. So I will probably cut those out tomorrow and the next day to make sure that they work properly. And then I have like 6 YouTube videos I'm working on simultaneously at the moment, all from different angles of what's going on. I have a table I'm working on. I have my guitar process. I'm working on a Vetric training course. I have a project that I'm making for a new summit called the CNC Summit, which I'll talk about more in just a second. And so I have all these videos that are in different points, which is a little disorganized. Usually I only work with one video at a time, but these all are at different stages, so it's a little crazy in my shop at the moment. And then for 3D printer, going through all my tools here, my 3D printer, I've been printing more planters because my spider plant had all its babies, and so I chopped off all the babies. And I got them
Just
into
release them from the mother nest.
I did, and I 3D printed a propagation station where they're 1-inch squares that sit in water so that they can just constantly have a food source. And they did really well in there with some moss to hold the roots together. And so they needed new homes. So I've been printing pots to put them in, and then I printed. Here's a couple of these watering cans, one for my office and one for my wife's office, so that we can water our babies. Plant dad.
And if you did not know, the term for the babies is technically pups.
Yes. Yep. Spider pups. But yeah, so okay, so back to CNC Summit. So today I announced on my Instagram page, and today, as in the day we're recording on February 10th, not the 18th when this comes out. But I announced on my Instagram page, CNC Summit is coming out on April 3rd and 4th. If you don't know what CNC Summit is, let me give you a brief overview. It is a online 2-day summit or conference where a bunch of CNC professionals from across the world are getting together and doing training classes, doing live panels. There'll be a keynote speaker and so on. So, for example, we have Jimmy DiResta, Jonathan Katz-Moses, Garrett from IDC Woodcraft, myself, and 19 total speakers. They're all getting together to do 45-minute training classes along with these panels and keynotes and everything. So it's going to be 2 really cool days. It is all live. It is free to attend live. But if you want a ticket to be able to have access to the recordings after the live and be able to replay them or go through the training courses again, all of that is available. The ticket, it has an early bird special through the end of February till March 1st for $49, and then it's going to go up to $79. So if you're interested, go to my Instagram, click at the link at the top. I have an affiliate link. Please use my affiliate link versus, one of the other guys, because my affiliate link and, love me long time. But anyways, yeah, it's going to be a great time. I'm super excited with all the people who are coming. Like I said, Jimmy, Jonathan, Garrett, Kyle from Learn Your CNC is going to be there. Hadel is going to be there. It's a great mix of makers from all different aspects of the CNC community. So it's going to be a great time. So again, April 3rd and 4th, go to my Instagram page, look at the link at the top. That'll take you to the site. You can at least look at it, bookmark it for the live for the free days. So.
And is that, did you say that it was more of a beginner?
So it is going to be a mix. Yeah, so it's going to be a mix, which is really cool. The guy who organized it, it was like, I don't want to just do for just beginners or just for advanced users. So like me, my class is going to be focused towards beginners. But somebody like Kyle from Learn Your CNC, he's doing a couple of advanced classes. So there are different on the website. There are different tabs that say, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and you can see all the courses that are going to be according to that. So, yeah, it's really cool. This is the first year we're doing it, the first of its kind, especially because it is just around CNC usage. So it's not like a different other ones you've seen where we're going to be talking about, how to use your jointer, that kind of thing. It's just around CNCs. So, yeah,
nice.
I'm excited. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. What have you been doing?
I have also been doing epoxy stuff. So since we had skipped a week, there's a little bit more, but I was also, I think I might have mentioned that I got sick from my son, which I thought, since I was sick earlier in the year, that I might get away with not catching it from him, but that was not the case, so I was out for a little bit. But so with that epoxy pour, I had several boards that had these full width cracks that it wasn't gonna work to cut them before filling that epoxy in there. So I got everything together. I caulked around all of the spots where I was going to fill the epoxy. And the tough thing with this was that a lot of these were like cracks and voids where it's very difficult to estimate how much epoxy you actually need, because you like there's a lot of it you can't see, so you don't know how much of that void, like you can estimate based on what's on the front versus the back, but some of these voids were like I don't know. So I mixed a lot of, I think I might have mixed like a quart of epoxy maybe, which is a good amount. And I used the it was a Total Boat dispersion pigment or something like that, to get the black that I want. And so far from what I've seen, the black looks how I want it to be, because prior on a couple of other projects I had used India ink, and it might have been how I mixed it that it didn't tint quite as dark, or I don't know. But
was
anyway,
it an alcohol-based India ink?
Yeah, it's a liquid one. I could have swore I had it on my desk over here. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know that it does not, like, it doesn't cure. So like if it's not mixed with something, like it's an ink that'll I don't want to say re-wets itself, but like it's not gonna
harden,
like dry.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when I went through, I did extra like knots and cracks and stuff that were like slightly smaller, because like I'm probably going to mix too much, so I might as well just have the excess on these. If I don't fill these extra ones, it's not a super big deal. So I had maybe, oh gosh, probably around 8 boards or so that I had stuff on. Like 2 or 3 of them had like big stuff or bigger voids on there. But since a lot of these cracks and voids went all the way through, I did opt to use a deep pour epoxy on mine, and so far from what I can tell, everything did just fine. It's just it takes a lot longer to cure. I did it's the deep pour has a few challenges with it. So I do a double barrier on my caulking, where I've got the like, all right, I fill in around where I want it to go, and then I put an extra one around there just in case something leaks through or whatever. And one of the challenges with that was I had a lot of cracks that went up to the edge. So sealing that properly was kind of weird to do. So I had opted to use just the blue Scotch masking tape, is like 2-inch wide. Because what I've gathered from other people is that if it's on the adhesive side, it doesn't matter quite as much the type of tape that you use, if you're using like a sheathing tape or not. It's if the epoxy is on the other side of the sheathing tape, the smooth side, that's when it actually matters to use sheathing tape. So then you save yourself a little bit of money. But that did cause some issues that I'll go into later. But I made sure to tape off everything on the bottom sides, and I made sure that I had paper plates under the opposite sides of all of these boards to catch any potential epoxy drip. So after I mixed together all the epoxy, make sure everything was mixed nice and good with the little like drill paddle wheel that everyone uses for that stuff. And then I added in my pigment and made sure, I had actually asked Brittany over at Brittany Carbone Art, I was like, these still have directions on like how much is recommended to add? There's like, do you have like a certain amount that you add? And she's like, what you want to do is just add pigment to it and then take a little bit and put it on like a tongue depressor or something like that. And if it's thinned out enough, you'll be able to see how transparent it is. It's kind of a little bit of a litmus test. So I did do that to get the desired amount. I think I might have used half of that little, like, gosh, was it like a 4 or 6 ounce container on that quart, which I don't know if that's using a lot or not, but that's about how much I ended up using on that. And then I made sure to pour everything in. I tried my best to start the pour on one edge of the crack and let it just flow and fill from that side. Because if you fill it from the top entirely from the get-go, it's got to force through all that air to get through. So it's easier to reduce the amount of bubbles that come through the epoxy if you start on one side and just kind of let it fill naturally. Because that deep pour epoxy, at least the kind that I had, has like a 6-hour working time. So you got plenty of time for that stuff to flow and fill all of those voids. So as I was kind of getting that filled in, I'd start on like one board with filling stuff. And then while that was starting to fill into there, I would start on another one, and then I'd come back to the other previous ones. And then I had my little map gas torch that I would go through to pop bubbles as they came through. And then I did top off some epoxy as needed as those bubbles popped and it filled in those voids. And then I did add a few space heaters in the shop, because this was also like that week where it was like, or it might have been like right after that week where it was ungodly cold. And of course it's in the basement, and I only have one vent that actually goes down there, so it doesn't do a whole lot for the heat. So I used a couple of space heaters, and before I remembered that I had a second space heater, I had some hair dryers and a heat gun running in there for a little bit during the day to kind of help with managing that heat, to keep it within the range that we wanted to keep it from going too cold and not actually curing, or going, I mean, it wasn't going to be that much of a risk to go too hot and have it cure too fast and then crack or whatever. So I checked on that a lot the first 6 hours or so when that working time was still there to pop bubbles and everything. And I ended up with I probably ended up using maybe half of the epoxy that I had mixed, which is like, it sucks that I have extra, but I always plan on extra. And what I do is I usually just keep that in the container as like a test sample piece, so that I know, all right, if anything's funky with this, then there's stuff funky with the epoxy that I had poured. But fortunately, everything ended up just fine with those. So I kept up on it, making sure that everything was fine over the course of several days as it cured. And it was the tail end of that when my son had gotten sick. So I was like taking care of him. So I was like, it's fine. It just gives it extra time to continue curing, because there's like curing to where you can touch it versus curing to where it's like fully cured. I think it just depends on the brand and whatnot of how long it truly takes to be like ready to actually work. Because with like probably the thickest portion, the thickest void was like maybe a few inches in diameter, and the full width of the board, which was like a little over 1.5 inches. So that was like the biggest one that I had. Most of them were like knots or cracks that went all the way through. So they had that depth to it, but it was like, I need the deep pour for this anyway, so I'm just going to use the extra on the other stuff. And if I have issues with it, I'll just carve it out with a chisel, and then re-pour in there with something else, and it'll be just fine. So after that stuff cured, I went back through, peeled off the caulking, and then the first method that I tried for getting the epoxy off was you can use the heat gun to kind of heat it up just a little bit and use a chisel to get under there and scoop it. I wasn't in love with my results from that, and that might have been partially my technique. But I opted
I've never had
had
good techniques doing that, or good results doing it that way either.
Yeah, because it's tough, because if you get it where it's like, because if you get it too hot, it kind of starts like fracturing and breaking in almost like a blocky, like crumbly way. But I think the proper way that you're doing it, it's tougher to get underneath it because it's not quite as hot. So you've got to force through it a little bit more. So it's a very fine temperature that you need to have it in there for it to work properly. So what I opted to do was run it through the planer. And I got mostly good results. I got a little bit of, call it pitting for a lack of a better term, just because the epoxy is brittle and you've got the knives hitting it. So you get sometimes where that knife hits and you've just got like a little indentation that like it kind of pops out a little bit. So what I did was I did not go all the way down to the wood. I went I left about a 32nd of an inch proud of the wood surface. And then I came back through and I sanded the rest, because with sanding, you don't, if you run it with a nice low setting, and I was at 80 grit, like it was just cutting through it just fine. And I wasn't getting any issues with like chips coming out or anything like that. So for the most part, everything filled in pretty darn good. And then since I had freshly done that, it was actually my turn at my networking group to present, because each person presents and they cycle through everyone and you just kind of talk about something new. So I did a presentation on epoxy, since I was looking up all of that stuff to basically show why it is an expensive product a lot of the times, because of all the work that goes into sealing it and managing temperature and all the extra stuff that you have to do with it to get the results that you want. So that was kind of the overarching theme, was like, epoxy is going to be expensive. Here's why, because to do it well, you've got to do all of this stuff. So that was a good presentation, because I could put a lot of pictures with it. So I still have some more work to do on that stuff, but most of that stuff is like flattened off. I have some epoxy that did go over the edge on a couple of them. So I have to recut those edges so they're nice and flat, so they're ready for glue up. So that's the next stage for me, is getting boards and their glue up on that project. And then on the 3D print side, at a nephew's birthday, which we're pretty sure that's where my son got sick, was with all the kids there. We actually had 2 kids' birthdays in one weekend, so we're not sure which one he probably got it from, but it's like, yeah, that tracks that he would get sick after that. So we did some Dummy 13 we printed out, which, if you're not familiar with that, it's just like a little action figure that's faceless and you pose it. Not quite like G.I. Joe, but more like those like posable art dummies that people use for like drawing, but it's for kids. So you got all these accessories with it. Like, we made like a bunch of different hats for it, and a dirt bike, and like a little rowboat, and a couple of other fun accessories for it. I think we did have a snowboard on there, and I think we might have done some skis as well too. So all the fun stuff that little kids love to do with those types of things. And then the last thing that I have is a while back, I think I had mentioned that I had to fix or some of the floor because of cat urine getting on it because of the litter box. So we'd been trying a couple of different things, because one cat had been pooping outside of the litter box. And so what I ended up doing was I got a huge 50-gallon tote, and I got a normal litter box and put it inside of that. I cut out the access hole, and then with that plastic panel, I made that a kind of like a deflector, so they had to go around that to get to the actual cutout doorway in there.
Yeah.
And then we also switched the type of litter, because our cats are like now in the like senior phase.
How old are
for
they?
a while. What?
How old are they?
Let's see. Like 14 or something like that. So it's like they're technically older, but they're kind of like that middle-aged.
No, that's senior. I mean, anything above 12, like mine.
Yeah, middle-aged to senior.
Yeah.
Depending on what their overall lifespan ends up being. My wife had a cat that she absolutely hated when she was a kid, that like lasted probably like 30 years or something like that. Just like the worst cat ever. So yeah, the more that you hate them, the longer they live. Was
it named Lucifer?
No, it was named, gosh.
Cinderella joke for those listening.
Was it Boots? I think it was Boots.
Okay.
Not Puss in Boots, but anyway, so we also switched litter, because we had gone from the, traditional litter to using those wood pellets. They have them as like bedding at like they're like Tractor Supply and other places like that. But we had read somewhere that, with these little cylinder shaped pellets, the nice thing is if they get kicked out, they're much easier to contain and see. But what they had said was that the edges of these, because they kind of fracture off, they can end up being a little bit pointy and uncomfortable for their feet. So we're like, okay, now that they're senior, they might be having like hip issues, which is probably why they're not squatting down as far and they're making more of a mess. Let's go back to a normal litter, and that seems to have helped, fingers crossed, so far. So I will probably, it's a very hacked together setup, and I would like to do something that's a little bit nicer, whether it's just some type of like cover that goes over it that makes it look nicer, or something that's even more than that. But I'll
Make
probably
something
have
out of
another.
like aromatic cedar or something to help soak up and clean out the smell.
I don't know. I'd have to research and see if that annoys the cats, or if they just don't, if they don't care for, or if it doesn't bother them. Because it's the like, because the thing is, you've got to be able to handle the cat urine for like the walls and the base of it. So I'm like, I don't know of anything other than doing like a like a varnish, or like a what's the stuff that they put on boats all the time? Marine varnish.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the generic term for it.
I was
But I don't.
I was thinking more of like basically build a box around your tote.
Yeah, that's what I meant by covering it, was building a box that goes around it.
Yeah.
Because what we would probably do at that stage is take the lid that's on the tote off, and then maybe have some type of lid that's easier to like open, and it holds itself open, so it's easier for me to do what I need to do for cleaning it out and whatnot. Because they are quite messy with that setup, and there's probably a few things that I want to change on the inside to make it an easier cleanup, so they're not spewing litter out of the access point. Because the one nice thing that we had on one of the other litter boxes was that it was only top entry, and then the top was like perforated, so when they stood on there, it would kind of scrape off their feet a little bit, and it got more of that stuff off. And with the bigger wood pellets, they generally didn't have those sticking to their paws when they came out, so there was generally less to clean up. So now I've got more to clean up, because those little granules stick to their paws a little bit more. So it's like, you know what, I'll take cleaning that up over, poop and urine in random places. So because they were, it was like right outside of the litter box, like in the same room, so it wasn't like that it was like a territorial or like another thing. It was like, well, I can't squat down in here, so I'll do it here. And sometimes they'd scoop litter out of the box and try and get it in there, because we had tried the different litter and a different box that had a front access, and they would just scoop it out of the box and scoop it onto what was like basically next to it. So anyway, that's enough of all of that interesting topic that no one asked for. We also learned a few things.
Fix it.
We did learn a few things from what's the Animal Planet guy that's like the My Cat from Hell? We did learn a few things from there before we did that, because the show is My Cat from Hell, and he comes in, he's like a bald dude with like, goatee and stuff, lots of piercings and whatnot, and he helps behavioral things that are causing cats to act naughty. And so he comes in, and most of the time they do pretty well. So there was a few things.
Mark
that we took from
Spagnolo,
that.
the cat whisperer.
Yeah, him. That guy.
Yeah, him. That guy. Anyways, so what's not been going well in the shop then for you?
So the first thing that I had an issue with on that epoxy pour was that the clear caulking that I had gotten, it was not a silicone-based caulking, which is supposed to be what you're using. So what I had seen, because I just opted for something that was clear, because then I could see if it was adhering to the wood.
Yep.
What had happened was it said silicone on the side, but it was like performs better than silicone, but I just saw that it was silicone on there.
Oh no.
So yeah, I don't know what the difference is, because it said it was some type of like polymer base, so I don't know what performance wise the difference was.
It's probably very similar to a resin polymer, so did the epoxy mold to it or adhere to it?
Yeah, like it went up to it and it did just fine. I think because there were some times when I had put down the bead of epoxy that on one side I kind of smushed it a little bit more against the wood, so I knew that it stayed. And there were other times where I wasn't paying quite as much attention. It was just kind of like a normal bead, like you were laying a tube on top of the wood. And the
Mm-hmm.
one that was more like the tube was much easier to peel off, because mainly because of the shape, because it being uh, one of them is convex and one of them is more like concave. One of them is more beaded up like water on like a wax surface, so you get
Convex.
that contact angle. So it's much easier to peel off as opposed to something that kind of has more of that like triangular shape. When you get down to
Yeah.
that thinner portion, it just breaks off instead of peeling off as one big piece. Um, so I don't know if it just adheres differently to the wood. Um, but I was having some issues with like peeling that stuff off, because what I ended up doing was on some of them, I ended up just coming through with a chisel to scoop out underneath, get right up into the epoxy, and then peel from the side and get what I could, and then run it all through the planer, and then I went through again to get underneath that epoxy, or not epoxy, that caulking a lot better. And I probably, most of the time it was probably like maybe a 64th of an inch thickness, where it was like I didn't want to be digging into the wood and reducing thickness, but I wanted to get up as much as I could. But if I left more than that, it was enough that it acted gummy and wasn't getting removed by the 80 grit sandpaper. So it was necessary to go back through and make sure, if it didn't come off cleanly, to go back through with a chisel, and get it as thin as possible so that it would actually, excuse me, come off. There wasn't any issues with like leftover residue, like that came off just fine, so it didn't like seep in any further. It was supposed to be like paint ready in like 30 minutes because it was technically for like an outdoor window application.
Yep.
So it did just, it ended up being like, it didn't have any bad effects. Most of the issues that I ended up having was tape on the bottom, as well as the spots that had cracks on the sides, and when it went up to the side with that tape. And so what I had noticed was on some of them, if the crack was sizable by any means on the bottom side where I had the tape, it would start bulging on the bottom just under the weight, and it started peeling the tape just a little bit. And there were some instances where it was like this like big old bubble on the bottom side, which the crappy thing is, like, you've got to get that down to flat, but if you've got stuff on both sides, you can't just run it through the planer because you don't have a flat reference surface. So some of them did okay. One of them, I actually clamped a piece of plywood on the bottom to just kind of like flatten it out and keep it from going all the way out to the edges and like popping up the sides, like basically like a diaper blowout for those parents who have experienced that.
Yeah.
And
Go in the
issue,
back. Yep.
yeah. The problem was some of my epoxy, I can't remember exactly if it came from the side dripping over or if it came from the underside, but epoxy got in between that masking tape and that piece of plywood that I had clamped to the bottom to keep it flat. So now I had epoxied a piece of wood onto the bottom that I needed to get off. And because like, since it was epoxy, I was like, I don't want to just like hit it off with a mallet because I don't know how strong it's been adhered to this thing. Like, it'd probably be okay, but I don't know. So I did the heat thing, and I ended up using a bunch of scrap walnut wedges that I had from a previous project to get in there and ease it and start prying. Got a little more heat in there with the heat gun, and then ease it off. And I had a little bit of plywood that had popped off, like one of the layers. But overall, it eventually came off relatively clean. But I was like, gosh, this sucks. This is terrible. So that was probably the worst one that I had because I had experienced all of the issues. I did also have one other thing, was I had noticed more bubbles on the bottom side, which to me, I think maybe what was going on there is air coming in through the tape where it started to leak out, and it was displacing and getting a bubble in there. So I don't know if that was more of the issue, I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure. And then the other thing that I had was, I think on the ones where I didn't have like as many leak issues, I got like on some spots it was proud of the wood, and then the other spots it had kind of recessed back in, which I think might have just
Yeah.
been the natural, like the epoxy as it cures, it's condensing down in size, which I knew that was going to happen when I was thinking about the top, but I didn't think about that on the bottom side of that happening. So I don't know if what I should have done is I should have taken like basically like a small plywood piece, put Tyvek tape on it, and then put a bead of caulking around that and then just stuck it to the bottom side. That probably would have been a better scenario that would have contained it a lot
Mm-hmm.
in a more controlled way. So then I would have just had like a, you know, an expected square size on the bottom, because with these just being partial, not like an epoxy pour, it didn't merit like an entire mold around the entire board. Like that just wasn't
Right.
necessary or practical by any means. I would have wasted so much epoxy. Um, so I did learn a lot from that. And then other tangential stuff that was breaking was car stuff. So I was doing some car maintenance, just things like replacing the engine air filters. We had an issue with one of the like battery terminals had just like corroded so much. So I had to like go back through, clean that off to make sure it was nice and clean, and use one of those like use the forbidden fleshlight that you use on the battery terminal in order to clean off the poles on those. And then I also
This
like
is what you. This is what you're making, not Car Talk podcast. From
this is
we're
the
not
what you're
clicking
breaking
clack
section. I'm fixing stuff. It was
Shout
I'm
out to the
doing
real
manly
ones who know who
things.
click and clack are. By the way, there was
I
an
listened
old,
to Click and Clack.
Did you? Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
that,
I know who Click and Clack are.
I grew up listening to that with my dad. So, yep. Anyway,
That's the Wood Talk spun off of that.
yep, they did.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's everything. Take a breath.
Okay.
My Lamaze.
Yeah. For me in my shop, what didn't go well this week, really the only thing I had problems with was this one roll of silver PLA. It kept like binding up, and I would have to it would, I would get your AMS motor is, overworked, and it's because it's not working because the thing is bound up, and so I had to unwind it a whole bunch, and it would be loose again, and then it would run for a while, and then like an hour later into the thing, it was all wound, or it was stuck again. So I don't know if whoever this one company, if it was just a bad roll or if they just suck at winding the filament, because it just kept having loops on itself. So
yeah, occasionally you'll have that happen. More often than not, it's usually a refill roll, because if something goes wrong when you're putting it on the spool, it can act funky. Was that one? Did you have to put the spool on, or did it come with the spool?
No, this one came with the spool, and it wasn't.
Yeah, so then they probably messed it up.
Yeah, and one of them was so bad I actually cut the filament and then had to like feed it down in at the same time so that it would keep printing without an interruption. So
yeah. Well, and another thing too is that sometimes what can happen is, especially on that AMS, you can get when it feeds back, if it doesn't feed back and rotate the spool in line with how much it's feeding back, what it feeds back can become a little bit loose. And then, so some of the spool gets loosened, and then when it pulls it tight, it basically pulls it all the way down in between all of those, and it's not on a nice, smooth spool that's coming undone. Because I've had it like that happen before, where the spool was not, it was not wound over itself in a knot, but because of how it did that, somehow it got into a state where it just pulls and it just digs itself into the other filament that's loose, and it just gets stuck. So it sounds like yours was actually like knotted though, which is generally not a fun time.
No, it wasn't. But it is what it is. But really, that was the only thing that didn't go so well. So, on that note, we are going to do a section we haven't done in a while.
Shut up and take my money.
The What You Selling section. So, I did have a market. So, right as I was getting sick, I will say I was sick. So, right as I was getting sick, I had Sasquatch Fest, and I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna miss it. So I went, and I wore a mask the whole time, and the other thing, I was like, I'm wearing a mask. Everyone is away from me. They're in the booth, but I'm not like up in their face. I'm like back behind everything. And I use tap to pay for everything. So I'm like, I don't have to touch anybody or anything. So like they can be there fine. Anyway, so I felt fine with it. But Sasquatch Fest was a bust this year. It sucked. Yeah. So besides the fact that I was sick, I wasn't selling much either, which really sucked. So normally Sasquatch Fest, I'll do $2,000 to $3,000. I barely made 1,000 this time.
So normally that would be on the top half of events in terms of revenue, right?
Yeah, for a single event. Yep. So and the booth fee is $250 alone. So with cost of everything, what I made, and with the booth fee and time and stuff, I probably only made $100 or $200 of profit. Like, it was not.
Did you have to
worth
stay
it
overnight for that one?
Time. No, luckily they are. It's only 45 minutes from the house, so
Gotcha.
up by 5, so I could just drive to it. But it was 2 very long days. Friday is an 8-hour day, and then Saturday is a 12-hour day. And so to make basically $200 of profit for 2 very, very full days, it was not great. And I luckily was one. I mean, I still made probably the most out of most vendors. There's another woodworker who's in one of my discords that I'm in. I know, and he does more laser stuff. He didn't make his booth fee back. I talked to a couple of other people that barely made their booth fee back. But when you talk, cost of the stuff they sold, they were still negative. So yeah, a couple of things I think did, and I've talked about this with some other people, but a couple of things that I think caused it was, one, the beer garden was moved away from the main area to across the street in an annex, which meant all the people who were drinking in there to party and have fun didn't bother to come back to shop, which is usually, where you get impulse buys. Then all of the speakers, which are in another room, and that's how it's been for a while. But this year, all the speaker booths, so their merchandise, they let be in that other room. So unless you wanted to come shop other market vendors, there was no need to come into our room.
Don't blame me there.
Right. And then again, the economy is down. It's still a ticketed event, so it's an expensive event to come to. And so you're already losing some people there. And then with those other changes, and again, with the economy down, attendance was down. I think it was probably half the attendance of last year, which was already a huge decrease from the year before. So I think this will be my last Sasquatch Fest with this company. Next year is their 10-year, and then so unless they announce that they're doing something massive, I don't really plan on going back to this one. So, because it was so frustrating. So, yeah, and because it has been getting worse year over year too. It's not like it was just one bad year. It's every year I've basically made half of what I made the year before. But the first couple of years were so damn good, it was just like, it was worth keep going. But now it's past that point of no return. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't really planned any markets or anything like that for this spring and winter portion of this half of the year, because most of the stuff that I did last year was because the local stuff, those events, that's when they was summer and fall time, and there was some like Christmas stuff, but post Christmas in like January and February, there's really not a whole lot. I think there was like a home and garden show this last weekend, if I remember right. But with the fee and it doesn't line up super well with what I have, so I don't think it's really worth it, because like it's already a smaller community, and with something like that, you're just not going to get a whole lot of foot traffic that you would at like a bigger city. And I'm talking cities that are like 6 figures or more in population.
Right.
So, and the other thing too is there's probably a few markets that I can look at in some of those neighboring communities, but I just haven't had the time to prepare for that type of event. Like most of the experimenting that I did last year was in the summer and fall. So now it's like, okay, now I kind of know what I want to do for those ones, but I wasn't ready to extend out and try new stuff at this part of the year, especially with something that is a little bit further away that's probably going to have some type of actual booth fee, because several of the events that I had didn't have a booth fee, and the ones that did, it was probably like, oh gosh, maybe like $100 or something like that. It's like super duper cheap, and within like 5 minutes driving distance of my house. So the amount of time invested was so low in those that the like anything return wise was relatively good, because the expenses going into it were so low. And I don't think there's quite as many of those opportunities for me outside of the ones that I've already done. But and as I start doing more small things, I've kind of got a general idea of what I like to have for the 3D print stuff. There's probably still some experimenting that I'll do, but there are some wood products that I do want to make of smaller pieces. And there's a few, they're much more artist focused types of events that are in some of those neighboring larger cities that I think will probably be worthwhile. So there's one or two that I think might work for me, but for most cases, especially, I mean, there's a lot of people that I know of in my area that are already at those events. So it's like, it's not going to be beneficial to me, and it's going to, I mean, not necessarily hurt the other person, but if it's already something that it's difficult to do well in there, adding more people with like similar stuff is not going to do too much. So I'm not hell bent on adding some of those, like, because these are the types of events that are closer to the size of events that you're more accustomed to, which I don't think I'm as drawn to those, at least in my area, for the higher expense aspect of it.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, and I have one more market. I have a market coming up in 2 weeks. It's the ALNA Brew Fest. So it's a nice brew fest, and they have a whole lifestyle artisan market area too. So it's usually a pretty good market, so it's good. And then I also I did apply for a couple of other surprise things that I don't usually apply for. So like I applied for 2 different towns. They have artisan and craft Saturday fairs. So I applied for a regular spot at a couple of them just to see if I get it. And then I've got a application into UFO Fest. Hopefully I'll be going there again. I got in like an hour after they put out the call for vendors. So I just don't like that you have to reapply every year. So I'm like, come on.
That sucks.
Yeah, but so here's hoping. Yeah, but that's all I have on that.
Somebody's watching me. It's my anxiety.
All right, so my first one, that's weird. Sorry, I just had a really weird thing. My fan just turned on out of nowhere in my office, and I don't have a remote for it, so that was strange. Ghost.
You have fans?
I have a fan in the office, and yeah, it just randomly turned on. Anyways, so my first one today is, I've talked about her a couple of times recently. Maggie Joe, she did a combination post with Stokecraft, and it was all about, her making her hat racks. if you don't know Maggie Jo, she is an outdoor enthusiast and woodworker. She's been known for making furniture and retail displays and everything. Great maker. I actually used her as an example in a sales class that I was in recently, because she's done such a great job of taking an individual item and selling it well. And so she's just created this CNC hat rack that she sells it for simply putting on the wall. It's a simple, just 1 inch by material that's cut out for spots where you put your baseball caps. And she's done such a great job of marketing and getting it out there, and is selling them by the bundle at this point. Bundles and hundreds of them. So just a great example of pivoting when a product starts to take off, and just running with it. So great job.
Nice. First one that I have here is, I know I've mentioned them before, but I don't know if I have the pronunciation correct, is Estropola Woodworking. And they are making the generic utensils that you have, like the spoon and like the wooden fork kind of thing, but they're doing a giant version of it that's like, gosh, is it like 3 or 4 feet maybe? So they've been documenting in stages for this giant fork and spoon, which is, I just think it's fun. So obviously it's no practical purpose other than for those of you who remember the "my spoon is too big" bit from a while ago. That was early internet days. I can't remember, that might have been pre-YouTube, or when YouTube was very, very young. So yeah, that's the first one that I've got.
My next one is from Lundy Makes. They did an amazing carved Pikachu and Mimikyu. And so they made it out of yellow heart and some wenge and Paduk, and just all hardwoods, all hand carved. It was really cool. So it was cool seeing the Pikachu and the Mimikyu, which is the mimic version of Pikachu. But yeah, it was really good pieces as part of a tribute to Pokemon in the 30 years. So
yes, because it is their 30-year anniversary, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's coming up in June.
Okay, I couldn't remember the exact date of it, but yeah, I will be looking forward to all of that fun stuff. Not to all of the expensive stuff that they'll be selling, but I wish it would be more affordable, the officially like Nintendo stuff that they'll have out. Because I'm still, it still sucks that those Lego sets are so expensive that they came out with. Anyway, next one that I have here is Banen Boxes on Instagram, Baenen boxes. So they make these really cool, it's like a triangular box, and they have these like brass legs, and then you've got your hinge on the top for this kind of triangular shape, and then they've got like this little insert into the box. And so it's just it's so wonderful seeing a non-square box container. One, because it's visually different, but two, you understand how difficult it is to get everything to like line up with all of that. And also it's kind of I would kind of consider it close to a mid-century modern, where it's kind of got, gentle curves and that kind of stuff. So I just think it looks wonderful. And they've done several of these with different variations. But I think it's wonderful, and it's really cool.
Awesome. My next one is at Omar Builds. Omar, I met at the Texas Woodworking Festival this last year, and I've been following him since. And Omar is doing this 30-day series of a real everyday about things that he has learned over his course of woodworking and building. So every day is a new tip or trick that he has learned. So I think he's on day 10 or so right now in the series. So if you don't follow him, go find him and watch. They've all been really, really good, from how to level a straightened board to the proper caulking techniques and so on. So it's been great.
Maybe I should have watched that.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, next one that I've got is Gilliam _design. And again, this one is a box, but this one is a wooden hinge that's like built into the box. And so I just love just when they're opening and closing it, just watching the hinge on this, because I don't I don't think there was a video accompanied with like how they made this particular hinge, which maybe just adds to the mystery of it. But I love those types of things where you're using wood as opposed to um, other hardware for hinges and other things. So I thought that was really fun.
Nice. My next one is Nudge Once. I think that's how you say it. Nuge.
Wants.
Yep, Nudge Once. Anyways, they made a massive walnut Tetris style puzzle piece style wall art piece, but was really cool. They're all 3D carved. They're each piece, and I'm talking like not small, like each piece is probably a foot. It was this giant thing. And they're all 3D carved. And then at the peaks of them, they used 24 karat gold leafing to add a gold accent to all of these. It just looks incredible. I think it's up in a corporate office or something that they put it in. And man, it's definitely a piece that if I was walking by, it would definitely be a stop and stare, because it is gorgeous.
Yeah, because they've got all that kind of rounded over effects to it, which is really cool. All right, last one that I have is from Dibby, so Dibbi, but put periods in between each of those, and they made this fun little wood carved plane that it's attached on a string, and I believe it's got a magnet in it. And then there is over the top of it, there's another accompanying magnet that just holds it mid-air, so that it's just got that nice motion and free flowing, just floating in the air aspect of it. So I think they've done a couple of other free floating things, but this is the first one that I had seen of theirs. So I think it's a really fun thing. Integrating in magnets to make stuff float or move around is always a lot of fun. I love adding motion. So I think that really adds to this piece, the amount of movement that you actually get out of it. It was really well done.
Nice. I don't have any others. Do you have any others?
No, that's all the ones that I've got.
Alrighty.
Well, you may not like it, Minister, but you can't deny Dumbledore's got style.
So tonight's main topic is about finding your style. Alex, I'll let you kick it off here, but about finding how you found your style, especially around furniture making, right? So how did you find your style?
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of styles that have come and gone that are out there. You know, they generally last decades, at least the more popular ones, because you've got things that are like, green and green, mid-century modern campaign style furniture, shaker furniture, modern minimalist farmhouse. You got Victorian Chippendale, mission style, arts and crafts, industrial. All of these pieces that sometimes some of them borrow from each other, and a lot of it is just seeing what's out there originally for furniture, and not only what visually looks cool, but what is just personally appealing to me, because it's like I can appreciate like the detail and work that goes into like Chippendale and Victorian style furniture, but I don't have as much of an interest of building that type of stuff myself personally. For me, at least what I gravitate towards, like I love mid-century modern style furniture. I do also really like campaign style furniture, as well as shaker style. So those are the ones that are some of my favorites, just from looking at what's been out there in the past, and what exists out there. And so I do gravitate towards those because visually I like them, but I can also see like how I can make those. And there's obviously a lot of information around how to build these styles. Obviously, with like stake style furniture, you've got a lot of stuff from Lost Art Press that are very well documented in their books on how to build. But whether it's furniture or decor items or just random things that you like to make, I think we've mentioned it in the past a little bit of sometimes you gravitate towards something because it's popular and you can sell it and you're in it to be a business. Or sometimes you go the other route where you just like to make what speaks to you or what's interesting to you. And then you start around there, and then people who also appreciate that style gravitate towards you. And I mean, especially if you're doing smaller items or decor items, I think going with what you enjoy and like and just letting those people actually kind of come towards you probably works a lot better. Just because we talk about Pokemon on here all the time because we love it and we know it. But like, I'm not going to understand other fan bases nearly as well for little decor items or other things, because like the Pokemon stuff is something that I do a lot of 3D printing around, because that's one that I understand that fan base a little bit more, and so that's why I'm more apt to do things like that or more decor and art style pieces that are within that vein, because it can be inspired by something that's existing but doesn't really exist in that type of environment. Because like, I mean, if I went really crazy and did like a Charizard themed like rocking chair, like that would be like super cool with like a rocker where like the back rocker is Charizard's tail or something like that. Like that's marrying together a couple of things that personally for me make a lot more sense that I enjoy. And a lot of times that experimentation is what you need to do to figure out what you do even like. So that's where a lot of people do end up starting, as making something that they have wanted themselves but couldn't find. And then when they show, hey, I made this cool thing, then they get inundated with people saying like, can you make me one of those? So that's one benefit of going that route, is that it becomes a little bit more organic if you do want to go that route of selling and making more of those types of items, or if it's just making those art pieces that give you joy, it completes its purpose right out of the gate, and then anything after that is just bonus.
Yeah. For me, so my style has always been what I like, or a problem that I've had. Like that's my making journey started from, I needed to build this one thing and I saw it and I decided to build it. So, but as I've grown in my ability, I'd say I gravitate specifically towards mid-century modern and shaker. Those are the two styles I resonate most with. And when I design something, that's usually the style it ends up coming out. It's not that I'm shooting to do just that. It's just that it's one of those styles basically. But yeah, for me, it was always just solving a problem that I had, or making something I want, like making a UFO thing because I find that hysterical, and or solving a problem I have where I have a coffee scoop and I need to clip things shut, and so come up with a design for that. Like, so there are certain things that I've solved, and that's what's been my design aspect. Can't say I gravitated I'm going to be a mid-century modern maker. Like, no, that's just what's come out because I've enjoyed it. And it may also work back with my wood teacher back in high school, where I have, that first foundation of woodworking. Mid-century modern was all the rage at that point, and I'm sure that's kind of the style he taught us. So,
yeah. And for those who aren't super familiar, so mid-century modern is a lot of flowing curves, a lot of rounded over pieces. So if you've got So say like the Hank chair is a chair that I absolutely love, that style, where like everything, like it's thick, bulky wood, but you've got these flowing lines and all of these rounded over edges, so it's still smooth. So it's meant it it just feels more approachable to me as opposed to something that is more ornate or a little bit sharper on angles. I think the smooth curves of it really appeals to me. And you can also integrate in some other things like brass and other things to kind of zhuzh it up if you want to. Um, but the shaker style, which is your like very basic, bare bones, generally a rectangular shape, minimalist. Um, Even though it does look minimalist, um, all of those right angles, like it becomes noticeable when you have mistakes. Um, like if something is not super close to like 90 degrees or it's skewed a little bit, as opposed to like with the mid-century modern, you've got a little bit more grace there and a little bit more give because you've got those flowing lines and some of those like kind of compound angles that are integrated in there, and you have those more organic shapes. Because I do also enjoy rustic like live edge style pieces, like especially like coffee tables. I I do truly enjoy taking a slab and figuring out where to smooth it out on the live edges, because it's no two pieces are generally going to be the same. And so each one, that goal of making it look effortlessly organic but still smooth, you've kind of got the dichotomy there of sometimes that natural slab is not always smooth, so sometimes you've got to um, interpolate how it could be in the future and what it could be, as opposed to how it started, because maybe it had a couple of sharp lines here and there, and then you smooth out some of those harsher lines to get a smoother, more organic shape. And there's no right or wrong when you are going into those like rustic slab style, because it being organic, there's meant to be changes in the lines and everything like that, but you can do it. There's better execution of it that makes it look even more natural, and it can be very difficult to make it look natural. And I think that aiming for that and making it look effortless is very interesting for me to kind of chase that objective for those, because there was even a few times on a couple of, one of them was a coffee table, and another one was a charcuterie board, where like I didn't know what to do with these like knot holes, because like I didn't want to take the time to fill them, and I didn't really know what to do. And my wife was like, well, why don't you just cut it out and then not have to deal with it? So I was like, okay, like maybe I can run with this idea. So I kind of cut it out and made that void from that knot the like a natural handle. So it operates as a handle, but it's in that nice organic shape that it's not like a briefcase handle where you're like, that's a handle. It's like, oh, there's this spot that just naturally fits my hand. It's kind of like, when they talk about like a computer mouse, like being close to like holding a rock in your hand, where it's like, it's something that can be familiar to you ergonomics wise. And ergonomics is a whole other aspect of things as well, because you want to envision how someone is using it and how they're experiencing it. Because sometimes the ergonomics makes something look not as nice, or something that like looks really nice is not ergonomic at all. Because I think a lot of people have said, I can't remember if it's like the green and green or if it's the Maloof style, where you've probably seen some of these rockers before where they have like a really, really contoured shape for the seat and it looks really nice. But a lot of people are like, that thing is god awful uncomfortable and your butt will be numb after 30 minutes. So there is something to be said about form and function and if it's more of a show piece rather than an actual utility piece that's actually gonna do something. Because even in a lot of the Lost Art Press books, they're like, dude, you can just do a flat bottom on that chair seat and have a little bit of a negative angle so your butt slides into it, and that's going to be way more comfortable than any of these sculpted seats. But because of the like people wanting to see a little bit of sculpting in there, sometimes they do just enough to make it look like it's sculpted, but not too much that it makes the ergonomics become ungodly, just unbearable.
I think a lot of the time too, it comes down to your ability. Like, I know when I started, I did a lot of live edge stuff because it was easy. And I think as you grow, you find that style, and you find your style, but you find your ability to do different styles grows. Because I know when one of the first furniture pieces I made that really challenged me, because I did some live edge ones because it was easy. The first one I did was actually it's from Cam from Blacktail Studio. He did a episode or a YouTube video about how he made a hand carved end table, as in the pedestal style carved end table, and sold it on Etsy on a brand new Etsy account, proving that you could make furniture and sell it without having to have 1 million followers or whatever. So it was actually a really good experiment. But I saw that style and I was like, I really like that. I want to make one. And it's just a simple 16-inch round top with a 45-degree undercut bevel on it, just to make it a little pointier, which adds a nice modern touch to it. And then that is attached to a long wooden base that is hand carved with a power carver, but then you use a spoke shave and sand it and everything, so it is perfectly circle. So I had the ability to do on a lathe, but doing it by a hand added a whole nother set of skills that I had never done before. And then I did use the lathe to actually create a pedestal, like concave base for it as well. So like it challenged me to make every single thing new that I hadn't done at that point. And then it was just became a nice style that I gravitated to. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, the more you do things, the more you challenge yourself, the more styles that you have access to it, and more ability to find a style that works for you and works for your need.
Yeah, and even like you were saying with that under bevel cut on that table, sometimes just doing a certain routing profile with just like a palm router can be enough of a change as an experiment to see, like, do I like doing this? Like, does this look cool? Because like, especially when you talk about pedestal table, to me, power carving is a lot more enjoyable or approachable, at least to me, than the lathe aspect of it. Just because I mean, I only have a small lathe setup, and getting a consistent diameter while doing something on the lathe can be very challenging. Not that it's impossible, just that, like, and it comes down to just about everything that you are making, is that sometimes it just boils down to patience and chopping things up into small bite-sized pieces that you can accomplish and do. And if you have enough of those steps, you can get to something that you probably never thought that you were able to create or even make. Because honestly, a lot of times you see it a lot of times in some of those quick videos, especially like joinery and other things, where it's like just putting out layout lines and figuring out a way to remove material up to that line makes it a very approachable target for you to achieve. So even if you're just like, oh, I want to do a half lap joint on these, okay, just mark it off with your square and figure out a way that works for you to remove that material, whether it's table saw, band saw, hand saw, Morton cuts, there's a million different ways that you can do it, but a lot of times it's like it's literally as simple as the kindergarten stuff that we learned of like you're just cutting to a line, or you're sanding to a line, or you're shaping to a line, cutting, chiseling, what have you. Um, and I've found that I can do a lot more if I am finding a way to superimpose that onto the object and just drawing it. Because like a good example of this is the little poop emoji that I made for Mark. I'd never done anything like that. And so what I did was I just took something, I was like, okay, I got to start with a cylinder. So what I did was I took a square block, I cut it down to octagonal, and then I sanded it down to like a round cylinder. And then I said, okay, I need to superimpose a spiral on here. So I just went around it and did like a simple spiral pattern. I was like, okay, I need to eventually start cutting into this line, because that's going to be my deep point. Because, you know, as the poop curls on itself, you've got like the line is the deeper portion. So I started by cutting in there, and then I just kind of cut deeper the closer I got to the top, and then I kind of shaped off the little twist at the top. And, you know, it took a lot of shaping, and it ended up taking a lot of time. I tried a couple of different things. Like I tried like a V-carved chisel, and that was okay. But what I found worked well for me was the Dremel with a little Kutzall attachment, and using that to kind of get the shape that I had wanted.
Yep.
And that's how I was able to figure out, like, I had never made that before. I didn't watch like a tutorial on how to make a little poop emoji, but it ended up working. And I would say, like, I was proud of that piece of crap.
Well, on that note, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
You know, when it comes to the design of things, I mean, we may not come up with a bunch of original ideas, but you might just combine a couple of things that interest you to come up with something that at least maybe it hadn't been seen before, or that specific combination of things where it's like, hey, I'm going to make, you know, a Pokemon themed coat rack because I need a coat rack and I love Pokemon, or I want a G.I. Joe themed, you know, catch-all tray for my mail or something like that because I love G.I. Joe or whatever. Just kind of let your imagination take shape and take something that is a normal functional object and maybe see if you can integrate into something that speaks to you, or, you know, adds a level of personality to it where it's like, you know, you can, I mean, I've seen people that have like carved like little animals into like chairs on like the backing of it, and it's like it was a fairly basic chair, but then they added that on there and it's super cool. Or like it was like the edge of a bowl, they added like a little chameleon that was carved into it or something like that, that added a level of personalization that took it from just a basic bowl to, you know, and a functional art piece. So I think it's more approachable than it seems. And if you end up making stuff that's just reproduction stuff, that's fine too, because there's value in being able to execute on a design well. And so you don't necessarily have to make something that is original or unique, but if you find joy in making things in that particular way, then that's enough. But if you want to take it a step further and add in those personalized pieces and kind of make it yours, that's great too. You just might find what it is that you enjoy more. And sometimes you might end up taking the longer route on something just because you like doing it. And maybe it's faster on the lathe, but you like using the power carving because it's just a lot more fun. Do the power carving if you want.
Yep.
The internet will definitely tell you which one you should do, but that ends up being engagement. So then more people see it and you end up winning. So it doesn't really matter in the end. I've had so many people tell me how I flattened my router sled wrong. And I was like, I just did it the way that worked for me and it did just fine. And it's all good. So, You don't have to worry about other people. Like there was always going to be people criticizing, but you've done more than that by simply trying. You've done more than most at that stage.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry about the keyboard warriors. Just make something.
Good news, everyone.
Good news.
Yes, so we've got a few things. I mean, speaking of learning how to do things, we've got a few events that are coming up here in the next month or two. I think I had mentioned it before, but Brittany Carbone Art on Instagram, she's doing an epoxy basics class at her Woodcraft. I think their handle is Woodcraft of Woburn. I think it's in the Boston-ish area, and that's on February 28th. And then I think I might have mentioned Albert Klein's online double bevel marquetry demonstration that he's doing. That one is on March 3rd, and because that one's an online one, they start at 7 p.m. Eastern. You register at petersvalley.org. And then the last one, which I know I have not mentioned, is it's on the Instagram account, the_chairmakers_toolbox. And this is a class that's in Strasburg, Virginia, that is like a beginning chair making class that runs from May 24th to the 30th. And you have to register by March 20th. And I think these are like technically like scholarships that get awarded. So I have not dug into what merits someone who gets selected for this. All I know is that Jeff Lefkowitz is teaching it. So if you're interested in making a chair and you are in that area, that might be something that you hit up and register for and see if that ends up working for you.
Perfect. And then just as a reminder, the CNC Summit, April 3rd and 4th. My affiliate link is in my Instagram page on my bio, but it's going to be a great way to learn your CNC.
Wonderful. And even if those don't tickle your fancy, you can obviously go to patreon.com/whatyourmakingshow if you so choose to sponsor this show and keep it going. And maybe we'll find even more events that do interest you and allow you to scratch that creative itch.
Exactly. Well, until we see you again.
In case I don't see ya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night night. Shabadoo.